Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another Saturday, and we're talking college football here with Win Daily Sports. I'm Dave Gluckner. This is Joel Schreck, and we're going to get into all that and more coming up here on the CFB DFS Masterminds. As always, we're brought to you by Underdog Fantasy, where we have that Win Daily 100 code still up. Get your free $100 up to $1,000 deposit match, where you can play so many cool daily sports on there, as well as prop bets. It's a great place to really get involved and have a little fun on the side and make some money. But Joel, missed you last week. Your son had a big birthday, right?
No, we went to my son had a birthday party.
Party. Okay.
Okay, but we had a good time. Missed you guys last week. Was a fun week. Definitely was a fun week. Had some good plays. Looking forward to this slate today. The pricing is interesting, but before we dive into today's slate, Dave, you have been on a hot streak with a big Thursday night takedown. Dave, tell us what your win was, who you played, and how'd you do it?
Yeah, so Joe, late little move. I was like, I gotta get some lineups in on a Thursday night. So I was only able to get in a few, but was able to take down a Daily Dollar 2,000 person entry, 2,000 person pool with the Thursday night slate. And what was big, I think total like $500-$600 across all my lineups. But the big thing going into that night was there was a cheap quarterback from Louisiana Tech that was able to, at 6K was able to drive up the So seventh in the big, I'm looking now, seventh in the big one and take down on the other. But yeah, he was the big reason I got there. At 6K, Louisiana Tech, Bullock put up 36.4, 4.8% owned. As you know, that ownership is a key. I know you use ownership when you look at your lineups, where you want to be. So that was big that night. But yeah, little hot streak. Let's keep it rolling today. I'm trying to learn from you.
I would even tell you, to your point, especially on these smaller slates when it's 3-4 games, like a Thursday or Friday night, finding a player that's under 10% owned that hits is the key to those slates. Because you're playing with 2,000 people, the more popular guys everyone's going to have. They're going to be in every lineup, right? You got to hit somebody that's going to be single percent owned. That's how you take down a GPP. In the big one like today, right, it's not as necessary. There's so many more players out there that you don't need necessarily one single percent owned player to get you there. You can be more diverse. Now, it doesn't mean play all the chalk. It just means you can spread your lineup out a little bit more and be unique. Whereas in a 3-game slate, you need to hit on that one guy that's going to make you different, which obviously Dave was able to do Thursday night.
Yeah, and that's kind of the strategies we roll into here. I don't want to play the public all the time, but there are cases when we do. But you got to steer away. Like last night, most owned quarterback or high salary quarterback, Cam Rising, was an absolute dud. And the Utah offense was a dud. If you would have played the UNLV Utah State game, which went 50-34, you swept the slate. So I was able to get some wins in that, but didn't get all the way to the top because a couple guys, in a really good matchup for Utah stunk. So it happens. But today, Joel, I'm loving the slate. I think there's a lot of good game environments, a lot of good game stack environments. But I also think there's some cheap value out there that I can't wait to talk about as well.
All right, well, let's get into it. We do have another event this today, so we're gonna have to cut this by 10:30. So we're gonna move quick through the slate and break down each game. We'll start with the first one here in Bama, South Carolina. Bama's offense has been fantastic. Their defense is not as good as we've typically seen, but this isn't the best game environment. South Carolina likes to run the ball. They play slow. They're a good defensive team. I'm not going to be looking to get overweight in this game environment because I think it's going to be slower paced. But I'll say Jalen Milroe has become pretty easily the best player in the country, at least for fantasy purposes. Gets it done with his legs. They've been throwing the ball a lot. Even at 10-8, I think he has the biggest upside of any player in the country. So again, I don't love it because of, the slow pace, but Jalen Milroe, I'll have a few shares of. You can play him with one of the receivers. My favorite, though, will be the Alabama tight end, C.J. Dippre. At 3.2, he's involved in the offense. He's the number probably 2, maybe 3 option, but they get him the ball. To be only 3.2K, I feel like is too cheap. So if you're looking for a salary saver, he'd be on my radar. But other than that, I'm not going to be overly exposed to this game. How about you, Dave?
Yeah, I agree. Let me check in. Zach, what's up, buddy? And Warren, as always, throw us in anything you got out there. We're going to go through each game by game quickly here. Appreciate you checking in. Yeah, this game, Milrow, I don't want to pay. I don't, but he's going to produce. He's going to produce with legs. He's now producing with his arm. I don't hate it because I think there's some areas you're going to be able to find some 3-4K guys that you could mix in Milrow in some lineup. So I'm with you there. Running backs, I'm out. I just think Alabama has just been too much of a kind of timeshare in the backfield. They're just not really committing to one or the other. Obviously, you got to put Williams in your radar, and it's going to be tough to pair him with Milrow, but you got to consider him. You can play him one off, and like you said, on South Carolina, there was a day where Sanders was like the bell cow. It's not anymore, and unfortunately, for those reasons, in Alabama's throughout the Vandy game, but normally tough defense, I'm probably off anything on Carolina, minus any real like shots in the dark at the low end, like you mentioned.
Boom. All right. There you have it. Clemson Wake Forest here. Listen, I'll be honest with you. I never really played Klubnik. Clemson's quarterback. He's been great to start the year. He's been really fantastic. They've been moving the ball. I do think some regression is coming, but probably not this week against a pretty bad Wake Forest defense. I think they're going to score plenty of points. You're going to want some exposure to this Clemson offense. Now, Phil Maffa is going to be owned. He's probably the highest owned player on the slate. At 6.5K, he's underpriced. Phil Maffa's a great play. I'm going to be playing plenty of Maffa. But I do think it's a perfectly fair strategy to go away from Maffa and play the passing game. You can play Klubnik and one of these receivers, which I think a lot of people are sleeping on, and get different from everyone else. So I'll have my exposure to Clemson, plenty of different ways to do it. But one guy I do want to put out there is Brenningstool, the tight end. They've gotten beaten by tight ends a few times this year in Wake Forest. I think it was Virginia's tight end Neville had 2 touchdowns on them. Last week, Jolly on NC State had a big game. Brenningstool is probably one of their best pass catchers. So at 4K, I think he's a great value. I'll be playing plenty of Brenningstool. And then Bryant Wesco is a freshman. He's a deep threat. He's gotten a few big games this year, beating teams deep. I think this Wake Forest team, again, really bad defense. They're going to get beat deep. I think Wesco has a chance to hit a ceiling game today as well. How about you, Dave? Who are you looking at in this game?
Yeah, love everything that you said on Clemson side. Maffa's going to be highly owned, and for all good reasons. He's underpriced for the amount of volume he gets. I think he was somewhere in the 19 carries to 1 for all running backs, or 25 touches to 1. Like, he's the guy when he's healthy and the game is in the right game script. So the other, Wesco talked about, but let's go on the Wake Forest side real fast. Check out Horatio Fields at 3,900, sitting there with 2 straight games of high volume, high route run, averaging 14.3 over the past 2 weeks. I think that's great under 4K. And also, give a look at this Mays guy, Micah Mays. He had a nice game last week, got a lot of the routes. When we thought this was Taylor Moran's backfield, or should I say, should be the guy for them, he just hasn't. And these other guys are starting to step up. So I'm looking at Fields and Mays as some cheap potential stars on the slate, because they're going to be playing from behind. And Wake Forest plays, you mentioned bad defense. They play at a high pace on offense. I don't like Bachmeier, but maybe we could get cheap and get one of these receivers to pop a nice 15, 20-point game.
Yeah, and one thing I'll add to that, I think, Dave, that's a really good point. And to your point, Fields at 3.9, Mays at 3, those are the types of guys to take a chance on, right? When we start talking about guys that are 5K, 4.7, it's a bigger risk, because they actually have to score or get 100 yards or score. With, you take a shot on Mays, if he gets 50 yards on a score, that's going to hit at 3K. It's so cheap. It's such a low bar for success. So again, the cheaper they are, the less risk that you have when taking a shot on some of these cheap guys. All right, Georgia Tech, North Carolina. We're starting to see North Carolina back to the poor defense, great team to target whenever you can. They were completely obliterated last week, couldn't stop a nosebleed. I think Georgia Tech is going to have their way this week. It looks like a great spot to target. Haynes King is probably my favorite quarterback on the slate today. If you've seen, Haynes King can absolutely get it done with his legs. They have 2 really good receivers. They've been throwing the ball really well. And what a great time to be coming up against a really poor defense where Haynes King can have a huge day, both on the ground and through the air. So Haynes King, my top quarterback on the slate. I will have a few lineups with Jamal Haynes. I'm not trying to pair Jamal Haynes and Haynes King together. I'll probably break those two up. But on the receiving side, the two main targets are Rutherford and Singleton. Rutherford's going to be a little bit more popular. He's been getting a little bit more targets. I actually prefer Singleton in this spot. He's the deeper threat. I think this could be the week where Singleton has the bigger game at a little bit lower ownership. But for the most part, the two of them are close to a coin flip. On the other side of the ball, everyone knows about Omarion Hampton. At 8.9, he's expensive, but he's a stud. He might get 30 carries, so certainly plenty of upside. But the one guy I want to put on everyone's radar is Nate McCollum, who has been in this program for a while. He's a senior. He had 13 targets last week, 10 catches, had a great game. I think they might be starting to make him the featured guy at 4.6. I think there's plenty of upside with Nate McCollum this week in what I think will be a high-scoring game.
I absolutely agree. Nate McCollum, star on my list today, coming off that game. And it's sneaky because, like you said, he's been hurt. He was hurt last year. He's hurt this year. And he just snuck back in this lineup, got a 70% route share and those 13-plus targets, who brought in 10 of them, right? Love it today, 4,600. I think there's going to be some pace. Georgia Tech can be beat in the air. Carolina tries to play in the top 10. Top 12, I want to say, pace in the nation. So I love that. And from your side, Haynes King is just absolutely it's a perfect matchup for him. JMU hung 70 on North Carolina. We saw Pittsburgh run ragged on him last week. Got to get some Georgia Tech shares for sure in some of your lineups this week. One other one I will go after is the tight end Nesbitt from Carolina. At 3,500, he's been steady, right? He's averaging over 10 points a game. I think there's a shot. Nesbitt's not a bad play today as well. North Carolina's got a lot of mouths to feed per se, but some of these cheaper targets like McCollum and Nesbitt I think are worth targeting. Definitely
want to get some shares of this game, however you can get them. All right, Iowa, Washington. This Iowa team and their defense, not as great of a defense as they've been historically, but still very good. Not an environment that I'm looking to target too much. But I will say Caleb Johnson's been one of the best running backs in the country. He has been explosive. At 8.3, I think the price is fair, and I will have some exposure to Caleb in this matchup. Other than Caleb, I'm probably not going to be too exposed in this game.
Yeah, I agree. I just think it's not only is it a low-scoring game from a total perspective, but it's a low-pace game for both these teams. So, I think the running back Johnson is fair. Just because I don't get scared about Washington's run D. It's all still predictive on some other matchups they've had. But, he touches the ball so much. Like, it's just in the 8,300, I'd even say he's probably fairer than some of the other top running backs. Reed, great spot, but I'm still a little – can it keep coming because Reed's getting it all through the air as well. So, no, I like the spot. Like you said, don't be scared of Johnson. That's about it.
All right. I love it. Wisconsin, Rutgers. Again, this is not a game environment we want to be in. These are two slower paced teams. Neither team very explosive. Maybe there's a player or two in this game that you can get to. For me, it's one guy I'm interested in, and that's Tawee Walker, the running back for Wisconsin. He has taken over the backfield since Malusi has left. I don't think they've adjusted his price to his adjusted role. At 5,300, he's underpriced. I like Tawee Walker a good bit today. Other than that, probably the only guy I'm targeting here in this game.
Yeah, I still like Montague. I still think he's a bell cow. They kind of got off script a little bit with Nebraska last week. He only got 11 carries, but besides that, he's 116 carries on the year and was averaging 24 a game going in. Oh, he still got 19 last week, not 11. So, I like Montague, but I'm with you with Walker. Wisconsin still did give the ball a few other running backs. But where they gave Walker the ball was at the goal line, 3 touchdowns last week. So I think it's, the price is right for Walker, but I do still see, I don't know if he's going to be the 100%, but it'll be a 70-30 kind of guy. And that's going to be fine if he gets goal line. So I'm with you.
Boom. All right. Moving to the afternoon portion of the slate, the Red River rivalry, Texas, Oklahoma. Should be a fun game, but maybe not because I think Texas is probably going to blow them out. Oklahoma's dealing with a bunch of injuries. They're good on defense. This probably, in my eye, is not going to turn into the shootout that this game has historically become, just because I think Oklahoma's offense is limited right now. I'm not really interested on the Oklahoma side. On the Texas side is where I would be interested, but they've really priced these guys up where, if anything, Oklahoma is good on defense and not on offense. So it's probably not the great environment to target these super expensive Texas pieces. Isaiah Bond it probably makes the most sense at 5,900, but for the most part, I won't be very exposed to this game.
Yeah, I'll tell you, for Oklahoma, now that they switched to Hawkins, interesting at 7,200. He's getting about 13, 14 carries a game, so he's strictly like 10 completions. So he's getting more carries than he is completions. So really a running quarterback. I could see some situations playing him at 7,200 and taking a shot in the dark with low ownership. I'm okay with. I've always liked the tight end there, Bauer Sharp, with top 3 receivers down. Chance at 3,400, but that's about where I'm at with Oklahoma. On Texas, I can't do Blue. Blue has some fumbling issues. We loved him coming in, 6 attempts last week. Before that, 25. I think he's getting in the doghouse a little bit. So at 7,600, 7,500, I can't. But the 2 receivers I really like at Texas. Wingo has just been very good as a very cheap receiver. He let us down last week, but I could see a bounce back at 3,500. And then Golden's been good too at 4,400. So I think there's some value in the Texas passing game this week. They'll want to blow out, if they can, with margin, their rivals from the north.
I love it. Find some value on the Texas side there. This next game here, Cincy UCF, is one of my favorite game environments as well today. People seem to be sleeping a little bit on this Cincinnati team. This Cincinnati offense is dynamic. They're a good offense. And this UCF defense, while strong against the run, is susceptible to the pass. I think this is a great opportunity for Cincinnati. I love Brandon Sorsby. Sorsby will probably be my second favorite quarterback on the slate. He gets it done through the air and with his legs. Plenty of opportunities to score. And then he has a clear go-to alpha in Xavier Henderson. The ownership for Henderson looks way lower than it should be from what I'm seeing today. If Henderson comes in at single-digit ownership, that's a crime to me, and I will be very overexposed to Henderson at 7,100 on this slate. So love Henderson, but the other guy to mention is the tight end, Joe Royer, who has been heavily involved in this passing game. 3,400 seems like a mispricing. He's going to carry some ownership. I think people are going to him. And this is an example, Dave and I, we were talking before the show, where I want to zig where other people zag. I'm going to be playing Royer because he's just too cheap. But I think I prefer Henderson because everyone's going to Royer because of the price. And people are kind of ignoring Henderson, who is the better player. So you can get a really low-owned Henderson because everyone wants to play Royer. And Henderson can offer the big game and in GPPs be a difference maker. So I'm going to be exposed to all of them, but there's some strategy here with ownership that you can look to between these guys. On the other side of the ball, we've mentioned it. Harvey is an absolute stud at 9,200. There's a few running backs in this range that you could play. You got to pick and choose, but I'll be game stacking Harvey in my Cincinnati stacks as a run back. Other than that, I've lost faith in Jefferson. I probably won't be playing too much of him, but I maybe will sprinkle in one of the receivers like Kobe Hudson in a game stack as well.
Yeah, it's on point. I don't know how you get shut down by Florida. UCF just not looking good with the quarterback there, Jefferson. He has one real good game this year. It's Colorado, but me and you could put up some points against Colorado. So yeah, it's RJ Harvey for me. I think he's the number one back on the board, and since he's struggled. I mean, I can go back to several of their games. Obviously, one with Pittsburgh was the Reed breakout game. But yeah, I love the calls with Royer and Henderson. I'm fine going Sorsby with those two together. UCF, as you see, 267th against wide receivers. Like you got to attack through there. And the questionable, Kiner's questionable. We don't know if he's going to play or not. He left last week's game, so I think they got to attack through the air. So love the Cincy air game, and then on the other side, the UCF run game.
All right, great game environment here to get exposure to, and we'll follow up with another good one. I think there's 2 more in a row here that I like. I'll start with Cal Pitt. This Pitt team has been awesome. They've repriced them where they're hard to play now, right? Pitt's been fantastic, and now you got to pay up to get them involved. But their pace is so good that it's just a good game environment, which tells me I want to get some exposure to Cal. And the one where I'm getting different is I really like Fernando Mendoza today. He's had almost 2 300-yard games in a row. He didn't get there, but he was close to 2 in a row. I think he's got another big game coming in a really good game environment, fast pace against this Pittsburgh team. Mendoza has not got it done with his legs this year, but last year he ran a few touchdowns in. I think this could be a spot where maybe he runs one in again as well. So Mendoza, another quarterback that will definitely be high on my radar. The issue with Mendoza that makes it challenging is he spreads the ball out. There's not one clear target, right? And, I would probably say Hunter is the number one receiver, but at 5,300, it's spread out too much. I think it's too much to pay on a risk with Hunter. The guy I want to pair Mendoza with most is actually the backup tight end. Yes, you heard me correct. The backup tight end, which is Corey Dyches. The reason is he plays like a receiver, even though on the depth chart he's the backup tight end. I think he ran the most routes of any player on the team last week. So he's playing receiver, even though he's technically a tight end. Corey Dyches transferred from Maryland. He was Maryland's top tight end last year. He's a pass getter. And if you look back, Pittsburgh has been most susceptible. The guys over the middle, slot receivers, tight ends, are who beat them. I think this is a spot where at 3,100, Dyches is super cheap. He's a risk, but I think there's some upside there.
Yeah, I love that all in Pittsburgh. I mean, Holstein, can you imagine the rise of Holstein? He was 5,400 versus Kent State, and now he's 9,700. But when you average almost 35 points or a little more on DraftKings, and you're a 15-3 TD to interception ratio, you've earned it. But what's more important about Holstein, why I think he's in play as well, even at that high price tag, he's run the ball a ton. I think 48 carries in 5 games. So he's getting upwards of 8-9 carries a game, as shown last week against North Carolina when he popped for 10. He had 14 against WVU one week. So he's also doing it with his legs. They're calling run plays for the quarterback. So I think he's a great play. The interesting one, and burnt me last week. But I'm still going to probably try it a little bit. And I say take this with full caution. But Rodney Hammond Jr. came back surprisingly last week. He was supposed to be suspended for the year. And then all of a sudden he's back. The suspension lifted. And he got 4 carries, 9 yards. Not great, right? But he got a couple near the goal line. That's what I'm looking for. We all know how awesome Reed is. But at 3K, if I can get a Hammond goal line touchdown, maybe a couple other points behind it and grab 10, 11 points, I think I'd be stealing money. So I would keep an eye on it, go light, but maybe as a far offshoot and then pay up for some others like Milroe, Holstein. I like it.
Interesting value there. I do have a quick question for you. Who would you rather play in your line? Who would you rather have? Holstein at 9.7 or Milroe at 10 point, 4 or 10.8?
Yeah, really tough. I probably would go Milroe. I think Alabama is going to be pissed off. I think they're going to play mad. And I think they're going to try and really, beat up South Carolina today. And that's going to be behind Milroe. But it's close. It is very close because that extra 1,000 less, it could go a long way, right? But I would lean, if I had to pay up, I would lean Milroe.
I agree. I take Milroe, but I agree. It's pretty close. All right. Louisville, Virginia, again. Another good game environment. There's another game to target. I like the Louisville side here. I will be playing Tyler Show at some quarterback. My favorite play here is going to be a receiver. Brooks is the guy for me. Brooks is the number one option. He's been extremely involved. He's had some big games already at 6,700. The way to attack this Virginia team is through the air, and I think he's going to get plenty of opportunities to do so. The more popular option will be Colin Lacey. At 3,900, he's clearly underpriced. He's going to carry some ownership. I think people may have feel burned from last week when playing him when he was underpriced and he didn't come through. I think he gets another opportunity here to make up for it. Totally a fair value play here at 3,900. I will be playing both Brooks and Lacey. You can play them both with Show or play one without, no problem. On the Virginia side, the one guy I do want to highlight is Kobe Pace at running back at 4,300. They got him 18, 19 carries last week. 4,300. He's just underpriced. And if he's going to get that many carries, be that involved in the offense, he's a really good value play here.
Yeah, love it all. I think, for me, when we look at this game, I think the Louisville passing game, as you highlighted, Ja'Cory Brooks is just, I can't believe he gets under-owned each week because he's just such a high volume. I will say that watching Louisville play last week against SMU, the quarterback had a great game against them from SMU, mainly in the running aspect, opening up things. Calandria could be a guy we could target today. I mean, the price isn't terrible at 7,900. It really depends on what we're going to get from a pace standpoint, but he's a guy that's been running the ball a lot too. So I have my eyes on Calandria, but he's got to do it in the running game. That's the only way he's going to get there because I think they're just a little too slow in the passing game, but something to keep an eye on for sure.
For sure. Keep an eye on that. All right, Stanford, Notre Dame. This will be a quick one. For me, this Notre Dame offense is all one player, right? It's Riley Leonard. They don't have great receivers. Jeremiah Love's okay. I don't think he's getting enough carries total to get there. I will have some exposure to Leonard. He's basically a running back. If he runs a few in, then Leonard will get you there at 8K. The price is right. Other than Leonard, I'm not interested in this game at all.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I mean, Stanford is so bad on defense, atrocious. And unfortunately, it's in the passing game. They're like one of the bottom 10 teams against the pass. But I still love Leonard. I think what Notre Dame's done after losing that one game to Northern Illinois, they've just said, hey, we're not going to pass much, and we're just going to pound the ball, and a lot of it's going to be behind Love and Leonard. And those are the two I would play today. On the other side, I mean, Stanford does try to get the ball at IMR a lot, and he's under 6K. He's a high volume receiver at under 6K. I'd be interested in trying to get him potentially in some run backs. He's only gone under double digits once this year in 5 games. So I think IMR is another guy I will be targeting as kind of, off the beaten path type of play.
I love it. All right. Penn State USC should be a fun game to watch. I'm excited to tune into this one. I don't think this is the best game environment. We've been saying all year, Penn State's a strong defense. This isn't a back and forth type team. This isn't a spot where you definitely want to go overweight and target. I'm not all that interested in USC. The USC side, maybe Zachariah Branch at 4,800, who, again, the number one receiver. He has been inconsistent, but I think this Penn State front's tough, so they might have to go to the air. He'll get some one-on-one matchup. So if anything, I'll be looking at Branch on the USC side. On the Penn State side, I like Singleton. This USC team has been very bad against the run. Singleton at 7K has been getting enough carries. He's a stud. Singleton's the guy I'd be most interested in this game.
Yeah, be careful with Penn State. They did it last week. Singleton was a late scratch, and it was all Allen. But they're saying it was an illness, so it looks like Singleton's back today. Going to be good, but just something to keep an eye on. I'm with you. Singleton's my guy between the two. Allen, in a showman's case last week, didn't really come up that big versus a not very good UCLA team. What did he end up with last week? Let's look at it. 14 points when he got his highest volume, 21 carries, 78 yards. So, yeah, I think they know they missed a little explosiveness. They barely beat UCLA, by the way, which is a bad team. So I think Singleton's the guy. So, but just keep an eye on his health. And on the other side, if somehow, some way, and we haven't seen it yet, but if Lake McCree gets back in the lineup, Lincoln Riley said maybe he's still looking at him. He's a high volume tight end, and he's averaged 4 receptions a game at 3,400. If he's playing today, another cheaper option that you could pivot to pay up for some of these real good guys we've talked about.
Boom, good call. I love that one there. Last game to look at here, Arizona BYU. I actually think there's some interest in Arizona here. Fafita was great last year. He struggled this year. He came out week 1, was great. He hasn't had that many touchdowns, but he has maybe the best receiver in the country in Jatoria McMillan.
Yeah,
I'll definitely have some exposure to McMillan. If you want to get different at quarterback, I mean, it's a GPP play. It's a risk, but Fafita won't carry any ownership because he hasn't been very good. I think Fafita could be in play at 6,500. And then on the run back, the couple of these BYU receivers who are pretty cheap between Lassiter and Roberts, they're the top 2 guys. They'll get targeted. You probably want to attack this Arizona team through the air. So I think one of these 2 guys could have a big game. I'll get some exposure in my lineups as well.
Yeah, I'm surprised with Fafita playing down a little bit this year. I was really impressed by them last year. Finished top 10 in the nation. But I think this is a day that they're going to have to play with pace. BYU's been very good this year. I love both quarterbacks. Retzlaff has been great this year at 7,400. I think he's a really good call. The BYU running game is the one that you really got to look at because Martin's been out since the start of the year, but they're saying he might be back. Start of the year, he had that big game with 13 carries at 4,100. If LJ Martin's playing, I mean, that's a great price for a starting running back with high volume versus a defense that they can attack in Arizona, ranking in the bottom half of the nation in rushing yards. And then if he's not, you can still probably flip for someone like Moa, who's had some decent games of late, especially last week. So keep an eye on the BYU running game. You can really get cheap there, and you're hoping one or the other gets the carries. And like you said, McMillan, I think one of my favorite receivers. I mean, I pair him up there with Brooks and Henderson. I think it's going to be a good day by McMillan.
I think you make a good point. My only worry with the BYU running game is that they might split. Because I think they're all too cheap, and so one of them has the opportunity to have a big day. But if they all eat into each other's workload, then you're in trouble because none of them are going to get enough carries to get there. But you're right, LJ Martin. If any of them is the bell cow, it would be him. And if he were to get the most carries at 4,100, if he gets 15 plus carries, then he's a great value player.
And that's he's been out since week 2. If he plays, I think he is the guy where the other guys have to share, right? So it's really Martin or nothing. But if you're what I'm getting at is if you're playing Martin, it's a late game and you hear he's out, at least Mo is 100. He could be a quick swap for you. That's all. But yes, it's Martin is my preferred call or nothing.
That's a good call. That is a good call. All right, we're not done yet. Before we get you out of here, we are heading over to Underdog. We will have a few pick'ems to give out to you this week. To hit on, Dave, we'll start with you. Have you looked at Underdog this week? What over-unders do you like?
I have, and I'm telling you, I think I'm going Milrow over his 55.5 rushing yards. As explained earlier, this is going to be a mad Bama team. This is going to be a Bama team that tries to take out their frustrations from last week's historic loss. I mean, you're never going to see probably a loss like that again. I'm talking Vanderbilt, the dumps of the SEC beats a powerhouse Alabama, and it's awesome. I love it. So I think they take out their frustrations. I'm looking at Milrow, big game. I was leaning maybe towards the over 2.5 passing TDs, but let's get what's on the ground. Over 55.5 seems very attainable for the potential Heisman Trophy winner.
There you have it. We're going over with Milrow. I am going with Ja'Cory Brooks, the receiver at Louisville, their number one option. 78 receiving yards. I think he clears this Marcus over 80. I think he's done it every week but one this year. And this is the matchup to do it. Virginia's pretty good against the run, terrible against the pass. It's a funnel matchup. They're going to go to the air. He's the top guy. Ja'Cory Brooks over 80 is a smash play for me.
And then I'm going to go to a night game and talk about another team that's going to be a little frustrated and ready to take their frustrations out on an opponent, and that's Tennessee. Just a dud last week, right? And now they get to face, remember the days when it was Tennessee, Florida was the big matchup, Peyton Manning. It was this one is somewhat of a big rivalry. I'll go with the quarterback here, Nico Imoleva. I might have stuttered on the last part of his name, but over 1.5 passing TDs. I think they try and get busy tonight. Primetime game too for Tennessee.
Boom. Nico, big prospect. The Tennessee team has looked good this year. I like that call. My last one for you guys is going to be Xavier Henderson. I mentioned him earlier. I love Xavier Henderson today in a great matchup against UCF. I'm going to take him to go over the 72.5 yard receiving prop. He's the go-to option. They've been feeding him. I think he's beaten this every game this year except for one as well. And he'll be featuring what I think will be a high-paced game. So Xavier Henderson over 72.5 receiving yards.
I love it. So real quick, Joe, while we get out of here, quick recap. We are in the quarterback area. We do like Milrow, but some of the other quarterbacks I know we mentioned, and we are focused on Klubnik. I think we both think could have another big game. Your favorite, Haynes King, correct? Right. And then as we go down the ladder a little bit, I think Tyler Schall is in play. We've talked about Louisville having a good pass game there. And Sorsby, another one that we're really targeting hard. And then I'm also looking at, and you gave one out too, but the guy over there in BYU, why is he not coming up?
The receiver?
Retzlaff. And then finally, you loved, who was the cheapest quarterback you loved out there?
Mendoza at Cal.
Mendoza. Yep. Good. So that's the quarterback. Running back, I think, is, it's up and down, but the top of the level, really good guys. So if you can pay up a little bit today, I think, you're a little questionable in the mid-range outside of Maffa. Maffa is probably going to be the highly owned. And receiver, Joel, who are your favorites again?
I love I just gave Brooks and Henderson. Because they have cheaper options on their team going higher owned, I think they're getting slept on a little bit. You can get low ownership for the two best receivers in great game environments today.
And I love McCollum, and I know Joel does too, out in UNC with those 13, 14 targets last week in a great game environment, 4,600. And I think the Wake receivers getting cheap there, potentially with Fields or Mays could bring home some money. There were some other cheap options, mainly in the tight end area. But other than that, we wish you guys some great luck today. We'll be in Discord if you need any other last-minute advice. But let's get some green screens, right, Joe?
Get the green screens. Always do. Good luck. Show us those green screens when you get them, and we'll do it again next week.